welcome in our next guest. That's Seth Schachner, the managing director for Strat Americas. And we're talking, I think, one of the biggest stories early in 2026 when it comes to kind of, stock by stock stories. And it's this Netflix, Paramount, Warner Brothers Discovery drama. It's almost like they could make a Netflix show on this, Seth. But talk to me about where things stand now and how you see them.
Good to be here, Alex. Yeah, look, this is something that I think a lot of us felt was going to be rolling on for months, if not years, and I think it's been pretty consistent with that. I mean, look, the latest is that the Warner Brothers Discovery Board continues to reject all of the Paramount offers, and Netflix went back and put an all-cash bid on the table, basically. And right now, just from the outside looking in, it really still appears to me that Netflix and Warner kind of want each other and want to dance with each other, and I still assume that's actually how the whole thing is going to fall out ultimately. But that said, I think Paramount and Mr. Ellison are still being incredibly aggressive about trying to get the Warner enterprise, and will probably continue to to pitch higher bids. How high they go, I don't know, but it's looking more likely like that to me. And I think there's a bunch of interesting questions on both sides around regulatory approval, which to me is still kind of a wild card for both right now. But I tend to think it looks clearly like Netflix and Warner Brothers want each other, and that's how I assume it's going to wind up ending up.
I have questions on the regulatory stuff, but before we get there and your thoughts on that, let's put ourselves in the shoes of the Ellison family and the team at Paramount. It's almost as if they're acting as if this is existential. Like if Netflix gets a hold of this IP, their offering is so strong that it's not anti-competitive, maybe in the sense of regulatory, but like they're just going to be so dominant. Like, how do you compete with that? Does that seem like a fair assessment?
Yeah, I think the real question, kind of an analog to what you're saying, is look, this town has been shaken up by everything from streaming to labor strife to AI now. And I think, our studio system here is really smartly looking at how it reinvents for the future and how you set up a film studio so that it's going to still be around and relevant in the next century. And, from that perspective, I think if you're an old school studio or one that's tied to old school assets like Paramount, CBS's with all those assets like Comedy Central and MTV, they probably saw a combination as aspirational and the next step to reinvent. And so I think that's why they're continuing to go after it. I will say to you that a lot of us in town here, reacted with absolute fear when the Netflix offer came out. And when I'll just speak for myself, the more I've thought about it, I actually think the Netflix Warner bid is closer to that reinvention than just combining two old school studios, basically. But yeah, if you're losing out on this, and I think from what has been publicly revealed, Zaslav and his team have kind of kept Ellison's people in the dark on a lot of different pieces of it. You're going to feel miffed, and you're going to get a little desperate for sure.
Yeah, and so that's where I kind of tend to think what you're saying, and what I tend to agree with is if this becomes a job loss discussion, I think it's harder to make the argument that Paramount isn't more about synergy than Netflix, which seems to just be buying IP and resources and the people behind these studios. I'm not sure you can make that argument for Paramount, but let's talk the regulatory, the pushback. I think I tend to resonate with your notes, but I want to hear it from you, which is that the kind of old school arguments don't necessarily apply.
Yeah, I've been listening to folks like Senator Warren and folks who are antitrust experts on it, respect all the points of view. But what I see on the landscape now is you have YouTube, you have user-generated content, you have younger stars like Mr. Beast that are more important to future generations than Brad Pitt are. And I think all of these enterprises, including Netflix, I saw it this week with their results, they're much broader entertainment companies, right? Netflix is in podcasts, is in video, they're in the NFL now. They're going to get a film studio, it looks like to me. So personally, I think the definitions at which regulators are looking at, they need to look forward as opposed to looking back 50 years. And so I think some of the regulatory stuff about any competition is kind of off, in either scenario, basically. I think the real things, there are parties that are at risk here for sure in this town and nationally, if you're a writer, a producer, a director, you might lose another place to sell your work, basically. And that to me is a real consideration, more than just the job losses combining studios. And then, this is obvious, but if you're a movie theater operator, this is a scary scenario, particularly from the perspective of Netflix getting it, no matter what Netflix says to me.
Hey, Seth, I gotta go, but real quick, real quick answer if you can. Is there any other company that Netflix would even consider buying at this kind of a scale? Is this one of one?
No, there's probably others. I could see other studios. I mean, who knows? Maybe Paramount. I don't know if Paramount's the right thing, but I think I would look out to things like music. Maybe they're verticals that they would see an opportunity in that they're not in right now. So hard to give you a really quick answer without putting a little more thought into that one. There are probably others.
We'll have to have you back, and maybe we can explore that if this goes through, where Netflix may go next as they embark upon a new journey and different type of investment going forward here. Seth Schachner, really appreciate it, Managing Director for Strat Americas.